Hi, Mircea. Good to see you again.
Hello.
Actually,
Likewise.
we've been on a similar situation last year with a panel. And again, we're going to talk about M&A. I think it's a topic that is very hot for all the startups here, or anyone that is in business at some point, sooner or later, is going to be looking into something like this. So,
well, it should be, at least we hope so, because that's where we get the money.
Right.
So yeah, we're waiting for you on the M&A scene, let's say.
Talking about the scene, maybe you can tell us a bit about how the investment and M&A scene in Romania is currently, and maybe we can then expand a bit into Europe and other sources of funding for startups or seed, A series, and so on.
What we've seen in 2019, it was, lawyers tend to be sometimes pessimistic, and we thought it's going to be awful. In fact, we had more work on more deals than we thought we would have in the beginning. We saw a slight decrease in the value of the deals for 2019, but that was mainly because there were huge deals in 2018. So that affected, let's say, the average. We saw some interesting sources of capital going in the region and somehow in Romania, because at a certain moment there were some South Korean funds that wanted to invest in the area. I think they didn't stop in Romania, but at least they were circling. So it's already interesting to get funds from that far away. We saw US companies coming closer and closer. There's a lot of US investment, at least a lot compared to what used to be. And I don't really know what 2020 would bring, because we've seen for the last month how easy it is to be affected by things outside Europe. And we're really querying whether this would affect the investment appetite of companies. But so far, the feeling we got is that there's money to be invested, and people have raised funds, and they have to do something with the funds.
That's great news. Can you tell us maybe which are the industries or the areas where most of these investments go in? I guess technology for sure, and IT, but maybe some other areas where these funds would go?
Well, we always have telecom. It's interesting to have funds investing in telecom. I think last year we saw CME bought by a fund, and also there's investment in real estate by funds, which was and was not the rule, but at least we saw deals in real estate by funds. And also private equity is going to manufacturing, interestingly. At least they buy some shares. But of course, telecom and whatever is, and technology would stay up front, and not talking only about Romania, but also about the region. Because in the end, we're not drivers of the trend. I think we're more or less reacting to the trend in the region. I hope it will continue, because it's been a healthy growth. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we all see. My next question is related to the split in the private equity part and VCs. We see more and more VCs present on the market with funds raised locally, but also through European sources. And I wanted to ask you, what are the chances of a startup being funded locally versus from a VC that is, let's say, based in UK or Germany, countries that have much more traction into these kind of investment exercises?
I think it's a tough one to get huge investments locally. So while you can get up to a level raising local funds, if you want to really go to get a larger ticket, you have to go abroad. Because funds would not necessarily go, and let's say foreign funds would not come here, because they already have a huge market there. So unless you want to get stuck here and be more or less blocked with local capital, you have to test the water abroad. So in other words, I think in order to get UK capital or German capital or US capital or Israeli capital, you have to be at least visible, or if not already strong there. There's there's a huge chance that this happens, because so far it did happen. I think there's a bit more than 10 already unicorns in the area, which means that in the area you have already a lot of investment from overseas. For instance, I think also from Australia you have, I think from the US you have a lot, from Israel you have. And I'm not really sure what's going to happen with China and the money they did want to invest up to a certain moment. But in a nutshell, I think startups have a very good chance to get money from abroad, from foreign funds, but they have to be there.
Right, so if I get this right, you would say that the local VCs are very helpful for the seed part?
For the seed, maybe Series A.
Right.
Maybe Series A.
But then if you really want to go globally or aim to be a unicorn, then you need to go abroad. And
you need to go abroad, organically. I think you need to sell abroad, you need to have a good footprint abroad, maybe have a corporate structure abroad, because foreign funds don't always understand, foreign people don't always understand what's going on here on a legislative side. So things are crazy. You don't know exactly what's going to be the tax rate for the next year. You don't know if you're going to have the same incentives or not. Don't know you actually don't know a lot. So that's why, while I think a Romanian footprint is natural for Romanian startups, the boundaries should be jumped, let's say, not only passed, but jumped if foreign money is what you're after. And I think if you want to be huge, then you can't be local, you can't be even regional. You have to be at least European.
I would move the conversation a bit into a different angle and touch a point that is rarely discussed, which is how would a company, from your perspective as a lawyer and being involved in so many transactions, how would a company should prepare for a transaction like this, for an investment being raised? Is it just the idea? Is it just the, or is it more complex? Do they need to have this in mind from day one, from the moment they start? And what would be your input in this respect?
Well, I would first strike out the situation when the buyer buys the team and not the product. Because if the buyer buys the team, then I think it's rather easy. You're going to be more or less employed there, so you don't really care a lot about how you structure the business that you sell. But if you have a product and you want to sell it properly, I think it depends on whether you want to sell it and just leave and use the money for whatever else, either holidays or developing the following business or another business which you already have. Or if you want to stay there, either as a shareholder or operationally speaking or in management. And then, let's say, going back to the first step, you need to know what you want in the beginning, or at least not necessarily in the first months or maybe in the first year, but at least the moment you think about exiting, or at least about making a transaction, you need to know what you want to get out of it. Because in that way, you would be able to structure your entire, let's say, selling package accordingly. Let's say you want to find a foreign investor, you want to go on the UK market, you want to go on the US market, you would maybe want to have a presence there from a corporate perspective. You want to get clarity on the contracts, you need to speak to someone to see exactly what type of things matter for UK investors, what matters for US investors, what matters for whatever Asian investors. So get a bit the feeling of what happens in similar deals with the particular type of investment that you're searching for. And then some things may be done, let's say, less ideally in the first phases, like you don't always build the proper contractual network, you don't always have the best IP clauses, you don't always have the best corporate governance rules, you don't always have the best evidence of the loans you made to the company.
Yeah,
so
usually startups, companies at least in Romania, go to a lawyer when it's already a bit too late.
Yeah, we feel like doctors in that way.
Yeah. So that's where my question was aiming. I mean,
look, in the first phases, I think bootstrapping is a good solution because you would get through the first hurdles with the people you know, with relatives, with friends, with whatever, with former colleagues. When you start getting serious, or if you want to play with the big guys, I think you need a bit more than just friends. I've seen once a deal where I think it was a Series A investment which was made with a friend of the founders. And that guy was, I think, a very good IP attorney, not an M&A attorney. And because they didn't, maybe they didn't understand, maybe they didn't negotiate perfectly, but it happens. The result was that the initial quota of the investor got increased without the founders knowing that it's going to happen. So it was there for people to see it, but there weren't the proper people to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
It's
all
frustrating.
sorts of traps
I don't think it was even a trap.
Okay.
I think it was out in the open. I think it was just a misalignment. I don't know.
Mistake. Yeah, it's important to get the proper advisor when you go into.
Obviously, this has to come at the adequate time.
Sure.
You don't always want to focus on this. You want to focus on a product because that's what you're usually selling, and that's where your first efforts should go, and the money. And but then again, when you build a nice product and you don't wrap it up perfectly, or at least good enough, most likely you're not going to sell it, or you're going to sell it for a discount.
Right. I think we have time for one more question before we go to the public. I see more and more this trend of corporates starting to invest in startups.
Yeah.
So besides the VCs that we see popping up in the last 2-3 years on the local market, there's a trend of corporates investing and creating startup divisions. Can you tell us if this is the trend just here, or it's just?
I think it's growing. It's not local or regional. It's not a local or regional trend. I think it's worldwide because, I mean, locally we'll always have the example of Clever, which was bought by Daimler, which in the beginning didn't make a lot of sense. But then I think corporations tend to become a bit stale, and they feel that they are rigid and they don't get new ideas, and they have some money to invest in a fresh breath. So that's why I think Skoda is investing, Siemens is investing, obviously Google, Microsoft, Intel are investing, some banks are investing. I think the company that owns Lacoste and some other indoor and outdoor clothes brands has invested in a company that, I think it's a Czech company, that is taking care of robotics for logistics. So they see synergies where you don't always expect corporates to see synergies. And that's very interesting, and it opens up a whole set of new doors for startups. But again, I think it's going to be it's a new animal that people are exploring right now, because we know how private equity deals look like with startups. We don't always know how corporate deals look with startups, because it's a whole lot of there's a whole series of differences. For instance, the private equity would look for an exit, while the corporate would not. Yep. And then there's a different mechanics. There's a different dynamics.
It acts as a strategic buyer from day one. So the whole structure would be totally different, and the reason for investing could be totally different than
exactly
the investment.
And also, I think that there's been an alliance, let's say, of banks that are investing. So they're almost creating a venture capital or a private equity fund for the banks. It's really amazing. Allianz, AXA, and it's really amazing. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're right on time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mircea.
Strangely.
Yes.
Yeah. Lawyers talk a lot.
Okay. So thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.
If you want to meet both of them, you should apply to InnovX, and you can have them as mentors. Again, so Mircea is a great lawyer and M&A star, also for the grinders. He had a really great advice for them, because you know you have to set everything right starting from the beginning. For fintech and relationship with banks, you should talk with Bogdan. On legal aspects, you have Modelina there. So again, if you would like to apply for InnovX, just come to me. We'll have the fire chats starting at 3:30, something like that. So give them some love, show them some really respect, and have them come.